Hi there! Happy New Year! Last year I made a video about all the books I've read in 2015 and I thought I would make the tradition by doing it again this year. In 2015 I didn't reach my reading goal of reading 10 books, but this year I can proudly say I've read 17 books. That's way over my goal. Now I have to be honest, I used an audio book app for half of the books and I actually been told by quite a few people that that doesn't count. Hearing that makes me a bit mad. Because listening to an audiobook just takes just as much time and just as much effort. But for someone like me with dyslexia it can save so much trouble and frustration. Well, that's all I'm gonna say about that for now. I'm going to discuss every book with a mini review. And I kept track of all my books on the website Goodreads, so you can go over there to my account to see all the books I've read. I also rated them on there, but I discovered that I'm really bad at rating. So I'm not gonna rate the books, but I can say I would recommend them all. So let's get started. First book I finished in 2016, The Girl Who Saved the King of Sweden by Jonas Jonasson. I read it halfway and then used the audiobook to finish it. It was a very complex story and it kept expanding. It was very well written and in the end it did make sense. It just was a bit frustrating to read for me. But very original book. Second book is I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. Picture. I used the audiobook. The book did surprise me a few times. I did however get annoyed at the main character now and then and I cringed a bit at some parts. Maybe because I'm not a teenage girl anymore, or maybe because the art school part comes too close to my own life. Anyway, the book surprised me a few times. It has an original setting and I think it would be worth to read it again. Girl Online on Tour by Sugg. I've listened to this book when I was all alone on the boat to Newcastle and I had 16 hours of nothing to do. And I really liked it because it calmed me down. Last month I listened to Girl Online Going Solo, which is the third book of the series. And I enjoyed that one more than the second one. I can see the main character was really developing in this story. And I also can see a lot of Zoe herself in the main character, which is fun. The books aren't that original, but they do cover panic attacks and anxiety, which I think is not covered very well in many books. And it's very enjoyable, but maybe a bit too easy. All the Bright Places by Jennifer Neven. I think it was really good. It surprised me a bit. It isn't the heartwarming story that I thought it would be. It's very good though. It has details that I love in stories, so it was perfect for me and actually not that hard to read. Part of the Outlander series by Dianna Gabaldon. I've listened to the Dutch audiobook. I wanted something with location Scotland because I was going there for a holiday. And I found this and I slowly fell in love with it. Slowly, because you have to give it time. With the second book, Dragonfly and Amber, I had to use the TV series to understand what I was listening to because it was getting a bit complicated now and then. And the same is for Voyager, the third book, but the TV series does stop there. And it was a bit more easy to follow actually. Everything by Nicola, Yoon. I don't know if I pronounced that right. It's part of the Sora book club and I bought it in Scotland. The idea of the story is very original, however I think the story itself sometimes is a bit cliché. However, the ending really did surprise me and all by all I think it was very nice and refreshing to read. Beautiful Broken Things by Sara, Barnard. Also from the Sora book club. It reminded me a lot of All the Bright Places and Girl Online, which is perhaps a weird combination. I love the fact that it was a story about friendship instead of the typical love story. It did however really read like a young adult book and sometimes that irritated me a bit, but maybe again that's because I'm not a teenager anymore. I don't know. Very lovely book though. As in Tas by Jelle, Brandt, Corstius. This is the only Dutch literature I read this year. Probably because high school ruined Dutch literature for me. This, however, is a really heartwarming story with lots of humor, and if you can read Dutch, I would highly recommend you this one. My Grandmother Sends Her Regards and Apologies by Fredrik Backman. I think this is my favorite story I've read this year. I bought this book in Sweden, which I think is a nice touch because the author is also Swedish. The writing style really reminds me of A Girl Who Saved the King of Sweden, but it is a little less complex. Just the first chapters are a bit hard to get into, but it's so rewarding to keep on reading. Harry Potter and the Cursed Child by J.K. Rowling, and actually John, Tiffany and Jack Thorne. Of course I had to read this, and I don't care what people say, I loved it. There were a few things that I think weren't really necessary, but I loved being back in the wizarding world of Harry Potter. A Man Called Oath by Fredrik Backman. I had to listen to this when I found out there was an audiobook of it because I loved My Grandmother Sends Her Regards and Apologies so much. I didn't like it as much as that story because I couldn't relate that much to the main character since it's an old man. But anyway, it is still a very heartwarming story. The Distance from Me to You by Marina Gessner. This story looks a lot like Wild by Cheryl Strait, which I've read a couple of years ago. It is the young adult version of this book, and it even mentions Wild in the story. I love adventure books, so I really like this. And it's also a book that is about strength and female power, which I think is a really good topic for a book made for teenagers and young adults. Let It Snow by John Green, Maureen Johnson and Laura Myracle. I don't know if I said it right. I actually started reading this book last Christmas, but I couldn't continue reading it when Christmas had ended, so I just finished it, and I have to say I loved the first story the most, by far. I did think the connections between the stories felt a bit unnecessary and forced, but I guess the main goal of this book is to make you feel Christmassy, and that's what it does. Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. Okay, to be honest, I haven't finished this book. I have this much left to read. That's because it's not really a story you get sucked into. It's more like a manual of how to live creative. I agree with some points. I also disagree with some points, but it makes you think, which is necessary to get inspired, I guess. I will tell you more about this next year, I think. Sorry. So that was it. Those were all the books I've read. I hope I did give a little bit of a good review. Please leave me your book recommendations to me down below in the comments. Now you know what I read. And I will see you in the new year. Goodbye.